EDMworks, we specialise in data management and have been doing so for over 25 years. We have the EDMworks data management agenda for privacy, precisely to support organisations' implementation of GDPR plus all the other things they need to do in terms of making sure that they get it right in terms of managing data about people for their organisation. It's broken down into several different areas. There is a general awareness section where there are some courses. There is a management section. There is an area for governance, risk and compliance. And then finally there is the capability development for practitioners and specialists. So if I take you through those one by one. For general awareness, the first course is a half-hour overview. It's called GDPR Key Facts. It's an online learning, and basically its purpose is to just deliver general awareness to everybody so that they understand why GDPR exists, what it's seeking to do, what are the key provisions, what are the penalties and sanctions. It gives people a very quick and easy overview into that regulation. GDPR Key Facts and Impacts covers the same territory as the initial general awareness course, but spends much more time, much greater focus on what your organisation should be doing about it in terms of board level, GDPR task force, what audit should be doing, what IT should be doing, what data management governance focuses much more around the what you actually should be doing and how you should be going about actually doing that. I mentioned earlier about don't assume that your current mindset is the right mindset for taking things forward. So we've actually put a course in, it's a short one, that covers changing mindsets and the sort of mindset that you might need for making sure that you get it right for GDPR and beyond. We look at a few different things. So we look at David Eagleman and we look at some of the work around neuroscience and about why the brain works in certain ways and why we do things in certain ways. And also to reflect on the world as we see it, because what we see isn't the whole of the world. And that's one of the reasons why we actually miss an awful lot of things that are going on in terms of underlying data management around an organisation. So we spend a little bit of time just thinking about neuroscience. We look at a little bit around systems thinking, so the work of Edward Deming, of course, who really started this many years ago, Peter Senge, that sort of end-to-end holistic view of how organisations work and how an organisation is a connection point between its end customers, its suppliers, and this sort of overall flow. And this helps to take people out of the immediate here I am right now doing my job and get them to think more broadly about what's going on. And then with some of the stuff about neuroscience, it's just to give people slightly different ways of thinking, which you need because current siloed thinking is just going to take you into a deeper rut. So we need things that are going to take us outside of that. And there are various things that can help us. So that's what that course is about. Management is a key part of GDPR and privacy implementation in general. It's all about accountability and it's all about making sure that we have the capability to manage this personal data around the organisation. So there are some short briefings that basically take management through what the accountabilities are, what the new obligations are, and how they need to go about addressing those and making sure that they have appropriate training programs, communication programs in place so that the key messages are getting out around the organisation about what this new thing is and how it's going to impact the organisation, and also that they are clear about how they are going to ensure key people get capabilities developed within different parts of the organisation so that they are in a position to delegate confidently to make sure the organisation has privacy built into it from a cultural perspective and from a sort of operational management perspective. There is a whole series of things to do about data management policy, so we run a short course on that, so data management policy and strategy. There are, in many respects, strategies get overcomplicated, so we look at 2 or 3 different alternative strategies that companies can adopt in terms of how they go about managing data and just some simple ideas to figure out what's the most appropriate way for you to do it, as to whether centralisation is a better model or federation is a better model based on your own capabilities. Because there's no one size fits all, there's no one right answer to these things. There are some things that must happen, there are some strategies that must be put in place, but some organisations, according to their capabilities, some strategies are more suitable for certain organisations. EDMworks data management agenda for privacy has a strong component around governance, risk and compliance. We could boil the ocean with this stuff, so it's important that we have a risk-based approach for prioritising things. So risk management and prioritisation is actually a crucial part of this. So the first course is Governance and Oversight, GDPR for Data Governance. It's a one-day course and it's built around the best principles that organisations have found over the last 10 years of implementing a risk-based approach to data governance. And that basically means that we prioritise things that are obviously most important, that we identify what data forms part of that we trace where that data comes from, we make sure we have controls around it, and we make sure that if there are any deficiencies either in the quality of the data or in the controls, that we put in place all the necessary. We make appropriate adjustments or we put in place remediation programs. We also have a course called Joined Up Regulation, primarily focused at people working in the compliance area. And again, so compliance people don't just see one particular regulation, but actually see probably the top 20 or 25, and then they can step back from those and see how different sets of data are used by different regulations. So it gives them a broader view of what is going on. Joined up regulation, and it's a key part of our overall approach to get people to just join up the dots. EDMworks, joined up thinking. That's our sort of ethos to how we go about this. And the final course in the governance, risk and compliance area is for the auditors. And the reason for this is because internal audit particularly are becoming a key part of most of the regulations that are coming down the pipeline now, because self-regulation is becoming such a big part of it. All the regulations, including GDPR, recognise that the supervisors themselves are not going to be able to do all the necessary policing, so they're very much looking for firms to regulate and for internal audit to make sure that they provide appropriate reports and safeguards to make sure that firms are complying. So in order to do that, the auditors need to have a much better understanding of the overall concepts as far as managing data about people, the different issues and challenges, as well as the strategies and policies for fixing it, as well as the governance approaches to make sure that it is being managed on an ongoing basis. So internal audit have key roles, and GDPR is something they need to understand, not just about the regulation, but about how companies are going about making sure that they comply, so that they can verify that compliance is actually happening. The final part of our EDMworks data management agenda for privacy is all about development of capability. So far we've talked about general awareness, we've talked about management, we've talked about governance, risk, compliance. Underneath all of that, you have to have capability. So there's certain capabilities that are required. So one of them, privacy impact assessments, they need to get upgraded in terms of you've now got to start thinking from a much more enterprise-wide view in terms of personal data. So how we go about doing privacy impact assessments, or how we need to enhance them to make sure that they are fit for purpose for what we need to do in the GDPR world and beyond, is crucial. Breach incident management is a key component. We need to make sure that we know exactly how we are going to manage breaches and make sure that we have in place processes, the notification processes, that we are well drilled, that we can sort of walk through things. So there's a whole thing about breach incident management, there's a whole course on breach incident planning that we need to make sure we have in place. We have our data practitioner course that we've adapted for privacy. Now the reason for that is that one of the key things that senior management need are people who understand how data works in their business, and they need a number of them placed in different parts of the business. So you have a cohort, if you like, of people who really understand why they're doing things, what needs to be done, how the escalation processes work. They may be subject matter experts about certain parts of data, they will have their day jobs, but we need to make sure that around the organisation there are a number of key people in every part of it who really do have a very strong understanding of how data works, the different aspects of data. This is how data quality works, this is what the architecture looks like, this is how we review models. There's all sorts of things, broad data skills that certain people need around the organisation. So that's what our data practitioner program is about, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people have been through that. One of the key things to set our targets straight and to make sure that we are keeping all our data initiatives on track is our course about data architecture, dictionary and inventory for privacy and consent. We've never really had to think about, from a data management point of view, we've never really had to think about consent in as much depth as we have to now, moving forward for GDPR and probably other regulations, other data protection regulations in other regions. So we have our data architecture course where we focus on the architectural design for different data sets, and we make sure that we have a data privacy and consent data model, and we make sure that people understand what that is and then how they're going to roll that out in different parts of the business so that we consistently manage consents in the way that we should do, and also the way that we have to, because consent is one of the key things that we have to manage, and if you don't manage it, the fines are draconian. The most serious fines are for misuse around consent. And then finally, data. To make all this work, you have to have fit for purpose data. So data quality management is another key part of our data management agenda for privacy. We have a course on data quality management to make sure that we understand exactly what we mean by personal data, and it's quite an extensive set of data, and the different characteristics and attributes to make sure that we know it's complete, accurate, timely, consistent, conformant, all these different measures that we would put. So that's what we've assembled. There's a whole series of things that your organisation will need to do in terms of making sure that you are compliant for GDPR and that you are doing it in a way that makes sense for your overall digital engagement strategies, your customer engagement strategies, your patient improvement, your student improvements, whatever those things are that you need to do. So you need to do those so that your organisation becomes better, lower risk, get the cost out, all those different things, but at the same time becoming compliant. So lots of things you have to do. Some of them are top down, some of them are bottom up. And what we've done is assembled our set of courses and communications vehicles under the banner of EDMworks Data Agenda for Privacy, and we'd be delighted to hear more from you.